I'd like to call this committee of the whole meeting to order. First item is the adoption of the agenda. Recommendations of committee of the whole adopts the September 4th, 2018 agenda as presented. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? So carried. My apologies, I forgot to mention that Councillor Tripp will not be present today. She's down with a flu symptom or something, so she didn't mention it to us. We're aware of it. Moving on to the minutes. Recommendation is committee of the whole adopts the August 20th, 2018 committee of the whole minutes as presented. Councillor Ross. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? So carried. The registered petitions. We're going to move that one possibly later. So we'll just we'll move item 4A to later on in the agenda. If everybody's okay with that. Sure. All right, because we don't have our presenter here. We've just been informed of that. So we'll move on to presentations from staff, the monthly highlight reports, which is 6A. Regional topics, we don't have any because I don't see Director Russell here. So the recommendation for the committee of the whole received the monthly highlight reports from department managers. May I have a mover, please, Councillor Thompson?
I do have a question.
Go ahead.
On the fire department, and I see the deputy chief is here, maybe he can answer. Kevin? The 18 calls related to Canada in attendees, is that unusual?
I'm sorry?
The
mic.
Oh,
Sorry.
so sorry. The 18 calls related to CanaFest and attendees. Is that normal?
Compared to previous years, it's in line.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Councillor Hammond?
Yeah, this is under current planning, and I'm just wondering if we could get some information. It says facilitated subdivision construction and completion of 10 lots, provided servicing assistance for several new single-family homes. Can we get any details on that? Prepared information, background information, attended 15 pre-application development related meetings. Prepared background information, attended meetings, and provided resources to BC Housing with respect to potential housing initiatives in Grand Forks, and responded to approximately 50 land use, business license, servicing, and other property-related inquiries. So is this in camera, or can this be elaborated on?
Sure.
Now it is.
Okay, with respect to the first one, that's 10 lot subdivision on 19th. It's by the Lazaroff subdivision, we call it. It was issued a subdivision, preliminary subdivision approval last November.
The 19th,
60, we don't have the exact address in front of me. I think it says 6100 block.
oh, it's in south of 68.
Correct.
Johnson Flats.
Johnson Flats, yes.
Okay.
Oh, 19th, yeah. It's on, yeah, it's not on the riverside, it's across the road on the opposite side. So they're just beginning to excavate, to start servicing those lots. So we've been working with them on a works agreement and et cetera.
Is that different than the Kettle River Estates?
Oh, it's, sorry, it's the same.
Oh, it's the same
It's
property.
the same
Okay.
one,
All right.
yes. Okay, with respect to, I'll go to BC Housing. Yeah, we've just been providing them with guideline, like all the background information for some potential sites, I guess. Nothing concrete, just general information about our official community plan and zoning. And some flood information as well. And what were the other ones?
The last 4 points on your report. You attended meetings and provided resources to BC Housing with respect to potential housing initiatives in Grand Forks, and I'm wondering,
That was that.
Yeah, that we provided them with general information,
okay.
yeah, about our zoning and our policies regarding housing.
I have a question regarding the Tim Hortons. I noticed it says signed permits for Tim Hortons development. I was speaking to Alan about that, and apparently it was going out for tender at the end of August, so the permits have not been signed yet?
Yes, or do you, the building, we've been working with them on their signs
Okay,
as an aftermath to the development permit.
okay. I
Yes.
just wanted to see.
Sign permit.
Yeah, and signed permits, that's why where the confusion was, because
Yeah.
it's going out for tender, permits already had to be.
Yes, they have.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Councillor Ross? Pull it out. All right, there you go.
Okay, yeah, I just like the idea here that year-to-date, the construction value is significantly higher than last year-to-date. I'm just wondering if that is as a result of people repairing their homes after the flood, or is this actually real new builds in town? And also, I'm looking at bylaw services, and our bylaw officer's not here, for business license complaints investigated. What?
Yeah, was that?
I just want to know what that's about.
I'll try getting more info on that, but yes, Bud was off last week, so.
I got a question on business license.
Business license complaints.
Oh, I mean, it just sounds so ambiguous.
Yeah.
So I think your worship is that, again, it would be on a complaint basis. If there was something that council needed to know, or something that was really up and out, that we would be advising council.
Well, I'm just wondering if it's pertaining to contractors parachuting into town.
Oh, I don't believe it's anything to do with that, your worship. I'm not totally sure. As the corporate officer said, he'll check into it and let me know if there's anything that's really outstanding.
Councillor Butler?
Yeah, again, on this report, I've been quite concerned about the state of the medium-term housing for winter. We haven't heard anything back on that recently, and I see that our staff provided secretarial work for the ad hoc housing committee. I imagine that is for the flood recovery housing committee. And I'm just quite concerned as to, we need to have plans in place about a month ago for the short-term housing coming for winter. We've got 90 to 100 units needed. And I know there's options out there. I've heard from different people in the community of really positive things that could happen quickly. And I'm feeling pretty antsy and insecure about where that's going, and I'm hoping I can be reassured.
I know the recovery team has a plan in place, and I think that they've actually had advised council of it a little while ago. I think that it's still in works, and I know that there's a whole bunch of different initiatives going on. And so, again, I would like to remind council that if there's any specific questions that they want to ask about this, please let us know ahead so we can actually have some of the folks here that can speak to it.
Okay. Any others?
Yeah.
Councillor Butler?
Sorry, just let me find which areas I've marked here. The implementation of the sidewalk on 72nd Avenue, could we get a little information on that, please?
72nd or 20th?
72nd. Silver Kettle.
Yeah.
I can respond to that. It's in process and expected to be paved by the third week of September.
In our term.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, so they got completed.
Councillor Butler?
And I don't see it at the moment, but there was provided campground revenue information for determination of business interruption and insurance loss amount. So are we getting covered by insurance for the amount of money we've lost on the campground this year?
Dorsey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we do have business interruption insurance on that, so we will be receiving some funds.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any other questions? If not, I'm gonna call the question. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Carried. All right. Yes. So we're gonna move backwards now, and we're going to go to our registered petitions and delegations. 4A, Grand Forks Search and Rescue Society. Subject matter is the 2019 fee for service and report. The recommendation is the committee of the whole receives for information the delegation presentation for the Grand Forks Search and Rescue Society. Furthermore, the committee of the whole forwards the fee for service request to the 2019 budgeting process. Over, please. Councilor Ross. Good morning and welcome.
All right, good morning. Sorry for being slightly late there. So from my side, and it seems like I was just here recently, but for a different topic. So basically for Grand Forks Search and Rescue, we're applying again for a fee for service request for the 2019 fiscal year. The fee that we're asking for is higher than before, but I wanted to go through a number of slides in my presentation, and then we can obviously go to question and answer. Can everyone hear me clearly? Perfect. So, I just wanted to give some background. I mean, you probably have seen a fair amount of coverage for search and rescue in the media, but just to set the facts straight and to give the complete details, I'm going to give a lot of the highlights that have happened in the last year. There's a bit of overlap between a previous presentation I did, but most of the details of this presentation are specific to this fee for service request. So it's been a really good year for our team in terms of our ability to respond and our capabilities. We have, from last fall, we have 12 new members in training, that's the MITs, and that actually came from last fall. We continue to actually get interest in new membership as well, which is awesome. We have 4 what we call G-STARs. Those are actually trained members from other areas of the province moving into the Grand Forks area. So that's really nice because they come with credentials for search and rescue. And so currently we're sitting at 14 search and rescue trained members and 20 MITs, members in training. And so that's a significant amount to move through. We have an accelerated training this fall. It's over 3 months, and we expect to get a large number of those 20 MITs through their formal training. So it's a lot to chew off, but I think things are going well, and a lot of those new members are very committed, and I think we'll see at least probably half of those people move through the course. It's always a little bit tricky with the timing works for all those members for the training, but the nice thing is even if they can't make all of the courses, they can make them afterwards. So I just wanted to speak about some of our specializations that we have right now. Probably the highest profile one is the Swiftwater Rescue. So we were certified in June of last year. We've actually had quite a number of training sessions earlier before the flooding in spring and during the summer. We continue to train as much as we can for obvious reasons because we're a new team. And so right now, in terms of our technicians, we have 7 technicians. These are members that are fully trained and are able to go right into the Swiftwater environment. We have 1 operational member. And then the rest of our team is Swiftwater aware, so they can be shoreline support or aware of what they can and cannot do near a Swiftwater or floodwater environments. And RAFTEX is something that our members attended. That's just meeting with other teams in the Kootenays to exchange ideas, gain new skills and knowledge, and develop a network with those teams. In addition to Swiftwater, because of our budget, we mandate that anyone doing Swiftwater is also signing up for ice rescue. For the brave only, but no, it's a lot of fun. In the ice rescue environment, it's really just about getting familiar with being in extremely cold water. And the reason why we ask that is that basically there's a lot of overlap in the gear, like especially the personal protective equipment. And so that way it's actually fiscally prudent for our group to have the member in both Swift Water and Ice. So we have 7 operational members there, and we had actually 2 training sessions in the spring, and we look forward to more training this winter.
Do you have dry suits, or are you getting wet?
Yes, no, they
They're
are full dry suits. So the only skin exposed is actually your hands, and a lot of members wear quite thick gloves. Some wear thinner gloves, and then your face, which ideally you're trying to keep your head out of the water. So, so there you go. So that's on the ice rescue front. On avalanche, this is kind of new for our group as well. This is not really a primary avalanche area, but there have been a number of past events, including some fatalities for avalanche, so that's something that our group is pursuing. We're obviously careful to spread ourselves too thin, but this is the next specialization we're going after. So we actually, on our team, we have 2 Canadian Avalanche Association Level 2 members on our team, which is actually quite rare. I think Nelson is the only of the team in the Kootenays that actually has a CA Level 2. We have a number of other Avalanche trained members, so Level 1s and team leaders and team members, and then we have a lot of people that are basically Avalanche aware as well on our team, so that they can be support roles. So anyway, so in terms of avalanche rescue, we continue to make inroads there. We're going to be applying for specialization from the province, so we can be primarily tasked as a team to go out to avalanche, but right now we would be able to assist any of the other teams when they're brought in here for avalanche until we get that specialization approved. All right, on the medical front, obviously really important. We're going out into sometimes very remote areas, but it can also be in areas close to the vicinity of Grand Forks, where basically the person needs immediate first aid, or maybe is in a tricky situation where they need to be brought forward to BC Ambulance Service or Fire Rescue. And so we currently have a nurse on the team, a paramedic, a physician actually just recently signed up, and we just want to see more activity from him before he's confirmed. And then we have non-urban emergency care, 2 members there, and we actually ran a SAR Med course for 9 students successfully, where we brought in other team members from Roslyn and Castlegar that wanted to be part of that course as well. So in terms of the first aid side, we're getting quite strong, which is obviously really important for the remoteness of some of our calls.
Did you have 1 or 2 nurses?
2 nurses.
2 nurses.
All right, in terms of the equipment that we have, basically it's probably a year and a half ago we acquired an SUV. We obviously applied decals to that. That's important obviously for presence, especially for safety when you parked on the side of a highway. It's 3M reflective and that sort of thing. We have a portable repeater when we go out into the hills. Actually, sometimes it's just a stone's throw from town where we can actually lose reception depending on the mountains and the terrain. So we have a portable repeater that can be set up from a briefcase essentially up in the hills. And we actually used that a lot during the flooding in Grand Forks. We actually deployed on the Thursday morning, we deployed a repeater to Observation Mountain for about 10 days in terms of helping us with communications throughout this area. And that way we had much better, 5x5 communications as opposed to static and noise and other issues that come up. Plus, we also had our own secure channel, which is important as well. We've purchased a number of team kits for swift water and for ground search and that sort of thing. We have rafts, and we've acquired a part of the BC Gaming grant that we got from Community Gaming. We purchased a side-by-side, a small one that could fit in the back of a pickup truck, as well as 2 snowmobiles to help on the avalanche side. And that doesn't necessarily be an avalanche rescue, it can just be a winter rescue where we're having to go through forestry service roads and that sort of thing to get to the subject or subjects. All right, so our plan for this year is, we'll continue for the special teams such as Swiftwater, Ice Rescue, Medical, to continue to train separately. As a group, we also have training every 2 weeks for the ground search component, which obviously is a big part of what we do, which also includes urban searches as well. Obviously on the comms side, we continue to make improvements there. We're fairly lucky to have a person who works with the communications company out of Trail. He's based in Grand Forks here, and he's doing a really good job of helping not just the Grand Forks search and rescue teams, but the other neighboring teams as well, so that we can all work closely together. Because when there's big events like flooding, you need to bring in the other teams. Like it's hard for us to basically maintain a very large team for just those sorts of events, so it makes sense bringing them in for those type of issues. Obviously, the medical program, we're making good inroads there. Fundraising, part of the reason why I'm here is basically on the fundraising side, continuing to bring in money for training, for gear, as well as personal protective equipment for our members. Obviously, that's key. And then, of course, we want, like I said, we want more MITs or members in training to go through the course this fall. That's going to incur costs such as travel time, because not all the courses are offered in Grand Forks. And then we also recognize that we need to get more support staff. So it's not just the ground pounders that are going out there and are able to look for the subjects. It's also, and help with the rescue. It's also people to help in the command post and help with if we have another situation where an EOC is ramped up in Grand Forks, where they can actually help out there as well. So those are key take-homes. Other things in the plan, purchasing an additional raft. We actually already have 2 rafts on the team, and we just need 1 more item that's really good for rapid swift water environments. We recognize that as the team grows, we need to delegate more amongst our own members, and they're all volunteers, and they take on more tasks themselves. 2 more snowmobiles, again, for overland winter searches and rescues. And then we right now we actually don't have any trailers for our UTV snowmobiles or rafts, so members are kindly donating theirs for that, and that's something that we should have essentially ready to go. Like our equipment should be on those trailers, whether they're enclosed or open or flat deck. That way, when we get a call out for the more urgent call outs like ice rescue, we need to be there as quickly as possible. And then our SUV needs to be accessorized with some key items like a winch and a basket on the roof for more gear and that sort of thing. And other than that, the last slide is basically we just need to work on our pre-plans, being prepared for all sorts of situations that we thought of ahead of time. Later on, we're going to pursue rope rescue. I spoke about avalanche. We actually have 2 new SAR managers that we've requested training for, which will really help out for the size of tasks we can take on. We're looking at purchasing a 1-ton truck. That's not in the near future, that's more like a year out, and then securing a search and rescue hull is more of the long-term plan. All right.
Councillor Ross, Councillor Butler.
Thanks, Grant, that's great. I'm just wondering if people have appropriate equipment that they would be willing to donate, do you have charitable status, and can those people then get a tax receipt?
Right, so from our organization side, we are not-for-profit currently. We've looked at becoming a charity. If someone would like such a donation to be charitable, what they would do is we can work with BC SARA, our parent organization, which we did with the Phoenix Foundation, and so they can basically, that can be our sponsor. The donation can go to BC SARA, which then is fed back to Grand Forks Search and Rescue.
And then they get the tax receipt?
Correct.
Okay, cool.
Councillor Butler.
Thanks, Grant. Your team's obviously extremely vital in Grand Forks, and we saw that over the past year, and really appreciative of your work, so thank you. Can you explain to us again, I know you did last year a little bit, your funding structure and the provincial government, are they planning on kicking in more funding? I mean, this is such an essential service, it's sad that you have to fundraise. And also the equipment that you purchased, does all that stay in Grand Forks, or do you share it with other teams? Like, I'm just concerned that taxpayer dollars being invested remain here in Grand Forks.
All right. So maybe start off the last question. Yes, absolutely, everything stays here in Grand Forks. We're not, any monies that we use towards equipment, that equipment is for our team. The only difference is sometimes there might be training where other members from other regions come in and join us for that training, but those other teams are actually paying for their members that are coming across, so that Grand Forks isn't footing the bill. In terms of the fundraising model, so it's actually multi-part. Every year we try to apply for BC Gaming community gaming grants. It's unknown whether you'll get that funding that year. Certainly, often what will happen is you'll get a portion of what you ask for. Last year was a good year for us, where after a reconsideration, they did actually come through with most of the ask. But it takes a lot of work, and there may not be a payoff there. In terms of BC governments, their funding model actually ended this year for us. So basically, over the past 3 years, we've been giving a set amount based on our membership from 3 years ago, which unfortunately at that time was only 14. And so even though our team is much larger in size, more than almost triple that, basically our funding is still based on that original team size, and I've tried to challenge that on a number of occasions, and unfortunately that's where it is. Other than that, like I mentioned, Phoenix Foundation, we applied this spring and they were able to fund some of our Swiftwater team gear. And the only other thing that comes up is the RDKB gives us annual funding. So that and the BC government funding for the last 3 years have been the only dependable amounts, but going forward, the BC government is supposedly discussing new funding model, but there have been no announcements or formalizations there yet.
So about how much do you get from the BC government now?
So up till now, it's been 25,000 for the last 3 years annually.
How much from RDKB?
5,000 from RDKB. It was 4,500, I think, the first year, and then this year was $5,000.
And I didn't see how much you were asking us for in here.
Yeah, I didn't see that.
Yeah, we already got approved for.
That was in the weekly summary. The letter was received late last week on Friday morning, so we added it to the weekly summary.
Yeah.
I think it was the amount of like 20,000.
Yeah. Yeah, that's correct. It's 20, so $20,000 is what we're asking for.
So you're requesting 20,000 from the city and you're getting 5,000
From the RDKB.
That is correct, yeah. I have also been chatting with the RDKB about the funding there. They fund not just Grand Forks Search and Rescue, but they also fund South Columbia Search and Rescue, as well as Roslyn Search and Rescue, are all in the RDKB.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. The services that your organization provides are just phenomenal. The 5,000 that you get, is that strictly from one of the two areas that you serve? And secondly, I know that the area directors have funding available for grants. And have you approached them for any or part of your equipment requirements?
So yeah, to answer the first question, the RDKB is just generally across the RDKB, so it's not for any specific areas. It's just that because we fall inside of the RDKB, we get a portion of their funding. And yes, I have approached them. That's probably going to be more the focus of a different discussion, which is the SAR hole. That's something that works better for their funding model, as opposed to smaller items that and the training and that sort of thing. It's really hard for them to track that and put forward a motion for that.
Councillor Hammond.
Yeah, I agree that everything that you're doing is totally essential, and I think this is awesome to have these services here in Grand Forks and within the boundary. I know you've been to us in the past for your fee-for-service, which we've already approved for $10,000. And I know you were here more recently than that for another ask. My concern is that it's not equitable across the region, where the city seems to be picking up the biggest tab, because there's a lot more that the city's provided that people aren't aware of. And so I would like to see the regional districts step up and either, Area C, Area D, Area all give their own, equal amounts. If you got 5,000 from each of the regional directors, that would be more, I think, in line with what should be going through.
I think that's very fair comments, and definitely will be pursuing. I guess the biggest issue we come across is just it's basically the same volunteers that are doing search and rescue are also doing the fundraising, and so it's just a limited time thing. But I can also say that we are pursuing other funding requests from the village of Midway and that sort of thing too. So we're not just relying on the city of Grand Forks, that obviously is the biggest center within our area, but we'll continue to push on other fronts, and that's part of our mandate. We formed a fundraising committee probably about 9 months ago, and that way we can pursue multiple avenues. We've also pursued corporate donations as well. We got from Fortis, put through a substantial donation, but there have been a number of other donors, including, Interfor, Bargain, even some of the mechanics in town have donated some time or free services and that sort of thing as well.
Just curious if you track where the majority of your calls are. I mean, we did obviously have a lot in Grand Forks last year with the flood, but generally are more of them in the backcountry, sort of outside of city limits in the regional district?
Yeah, I would say that majority aren't urban searches, obviously, or I mean, obviously this past May with flooding was, I guess, a bit of an exception, but I don't want to. I want to be careful there because in future years that might become more commonplace. However, even though maybe it's outside the city of Grand Forks, it often involves residents from the city of Grand Forks. So that's the one thing I want to mention. But of course, people from the boundary in general.
We get lost more.
That's awesome.
Thanks. You had mentioned about perhaps having more, I don't know if you use the word staff or support people that were doing maybe communication at a particular sentry close to the location where you're doing a search. So are you talking about staff positions or paying people like an honorarium or a per diem? Yeah, so you were, I don't know if you were alluding to the fact that you might need some staff. So some of this funding is going to go towards supporting that.
So from our side, we're not allowed to pay staff. We're all volunteers, and so that support staff is just volunteers that are helping more out in the operational side of things. And it could be someone doing our books. It could be someone who's doing radios and communications from our staging area or command. It could be someone going to fetch sandwiches for lunch for our members that don't have food because they're there much longer than they thought they were originally going to be there. But yeah, it's all volunteer unpaid.
Okay, great, thank you.
So that would mean that people who physically can't do the work in the bush can still help out.
That's quite right. And not only that, but even people that are physically able may be more interested in helping out in a supporting role. And so we would encourage that.
For the record, that was Les Johnson.
Yeah, so
Any other questions? All right, hearing none, thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
All those in favor of receipt? And then we'll do the second, we'll do the second. All those in favor of receipt? Anyone opposed? So carried. All those in favor of forwarding to the 2019 budgeting process?
Do you need a mover and second?
We did it all at once, but now I'm calling the question individually.
Well, I'd like to make the resolution that we refer this to the budget process.
Okay, second? No, we don't need a second. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Carried. All right, thank you again.
Thanks.
There you go.
All right, we've already done all of the staff and managers. So now we're going to move on to item 8A, which is bylaw 2051, the 2019 revenue anticipation borrowing bylaw from our chief financial officer. And the recommendation is the committee of the whole recommends that council gives first 3 readings to the 2019 revenue anticipation borrowing bylaw number 2051 at the September 24th, 2018 regular meeting. Move it, please. Councilor Thompson. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Carried. 8B, bylaw 2054, smoke and vape free places bylaw. Recommendation is that the committee of the whole recommends to council to give the first 3 readings to bylaw 2054, smoke and vape free places bylaw at the September 24th, 2018 regular meeting. Move it, please. Councilor Thompson. All those in discussion. Councilor
Discussion, yeah.
Great, so council had originally discussed having a smoking bylaw in place with the legalization of cannabis coming online, but when I read through this, it seems that this is including all smoking, so we would be banning smoking cigarettes on the downtown streets and in public places as well. And I've just been listening to feedback out there in the community. I read Les Johnson's post, and I don't know if that's council's intention with this bylaw? Are you guys comfortable with banning all smoking on the streets, or is this just supposed to be intended for cannabis?
Or corporate owners.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So we took there was 2 bylaws recently passed. One was in the town of Oliver, and the other one was in Rossland. So our deputy corporate officer combined those bylaws into one bylaw. It is really hard to focus only on banning cannabis smoking and allowing the other smoking to happen. It's not meant for everywhere in the downtown. It is on sidewalks, if I recall this right, but our deputy corporate officer could speak to that. The Market Ave would be the only street officially where it wouldn't be happening, like where it's excluded, and parks and recreational areas and things like that, which shouldn't have a lot of smoking happening anyways if you're trying to exemplify, healthy communities and healthy living.
Thank you. So yeah, so as Daniel mentioned, this was based partly on Oliver and Rossland's recent bylaws. Oliver went through a rather lengthy process that started in February. Their bylaw was adopted in July. And in addition, we also took into consideration the provincial legislation, the Tobacco and Vape Product Controls Act. So our bylaw extends that, but does not there's nothing in our bylaw that would be challenged because it exceeds the provincial restrictions.
Okay, gentleman in the back, and then Councilor Butler.
Les Johnson, GFTV, former smoker. I'm
Totally?
looking, former,
Totally?
well. I'm looking at the wording of the bylaw, and you get down to section D, it says on public sidewalks. It doesn't specify public sidewalks downtown. It specifies public sidewalks. So, wherever there's a sidewalk, that's what that could be interpreted as. I mean, if somebody was to try and fight this, their lawyer would say, well, look, that says public sidewalks. Every public sidewalk. I mean, just the way that this is worded, you can, as people who have taken from what I wrote, and my intent was to point out that this is amazingly large reach. People who have smoked cigarettes will find themselves possibly, like, I could literally stand in the street and have a cigarette, but if I walk onto the sidewalk, I'm breaking the law. I mean, earlier on this year, you were talking about the cannabis thing, and you didn't want any signs in the front. Some people didn't want any signs in the front. Well, now apparently the only place downtown you'll be able to smoke cigarettes in public is in the back alleys. What? Like, are you trying to shove all the things you don't like into the back alleys? That's only partly facetious. I mean, you're talking about a large portion of your population. I don't know how many, but a large portion of your population are now being pushed off to the margins and literally out of sight.
Could we then label it as designated sidewalks or areas? Would that be a possibility to put that in the bylaw as designated? So as to,
It says, sorry.
go ahead. Oh, sorry.
We certainly could put that in. Rossland does specify public sidewalks and then separately lists their downtown area, which we list as Market Avenue as opposed to Columbia Avenue. Having said that, latest StatsCan numbers are that in British Columbia, that majority is just a hair over 10% of the population of the province are smokers.
Good, thank you. Councilor Butler and then Councilor Thompson.
Yeah, so it's my understanding, and I'm not sure if you looked into it, but Washington State, you can't openly consume cannabis on any sidewalks. You can't walk down the streets, but you can walk down the streets or smoking a cigarette. With the cannabis legalization coming in, my understanding was this bylaw was being created to regulate the open public consumption of cannabis, not cigarettes. And if Washington State's able to do that, I don't know why it'd be difficult for us to create a bylaw that does that.
I don't suppose it would be difficult to do so. The guidance we had specifically said smoking, not cannabis, so therefore it was deliberately done to be broad. And we didn't look at US regulations. We looked at other areas in Canada when we were drafting this.
And I guess if cannabis does become legalized, there can always be an amendment put into the bylaw, as the feds will probably issue some kind of statements also based on that, and we could follow suit.
No, they're not doing that. That's why
Well,
we're
not
being
yet.
asked to do it.
But not yet.
Well, then why are we doing this bylaw if we're still waiting for one? Jumping the
Anything's
gun.
able to be amended. Our order, Councillor Thompson, Councillor Croggan, and Councillor Hammond, and our corporate officer, I believe that's what you said. Would you like to speak in on that now?
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The issue that has been brought forward to us was largely from the downtown business community that have outdoor patios. The smoking, it doesn't matter what it is, impacts their businesses. There's also certain areas in town that I've received feedback from where people don't even walk down there anymore because of smoking. It doesn't, it seems to be centralized in certain areas. IHA has been involved with this as well for the town of Oliver and helped craft their bylaw and go through the process in general for, at the end, helping the community and helping the health of the community in a way. Secondhand smoke is almost worse than smoking on your own. It's been proven. I've been living in a household where I grew up, my mom smoking for 30 years. She has been working on quitting nowadays too, but secondhand smoke can be worse, is worse, and it would be a bold step for council. We brought it forward. If council wants to go this way now or after the election, it's up to council. We were asked to bring it, so we're bringing it.
As Mr. McKinnon said, it's been well crafted because you used two good models and all the background history is there with it.
Who asked
Last one,
to bring it forward? Council.
Council.
When?
Anyway,
A couple of meetings ago, we talked about it. My question is on this outdoor public event. And on any city-owned, controlled, or operated property that is leased to a third party, or event for which a city rental use permit is required. My understanding, and I can attest to this, is that when CannaFest happens, there is a specified area,
Designated smoking area.
but it's for medical marijuana, is that?
No, it's for
correct?
smoking.
Call it what it is.
There's a designated area for smokers who smoke
Okay.
cigarettes. If you want to smoke weed, there's a second that area, which is way at the back corner. And it's much smaller.
Because I mean, as a former smoker who had the cigarettes ruling me instead of the other way around until I was able to quit, I do have sympathies for those people who have the habit, and it's a difficult one to start. It's an even harder one to quit. So, well, I appreciate the intent here. I would like to see it somewhat limited to well, not necessarily just to cannabis, but if people are offended by cigarette smoke in the downtown area, if it's impacting their businesses, restaurants and the other that have outdoor patios, then perhaps just limit it to market.
Councillor Crog, then Councillor Hammond, then Councillor Butler.
Yeah, two questions. Through you to staff, did Oliver say how they were going to police this? Do they have bylaw enforcement officers that are going to constant, or have they not thought that far ahead?
Go ahead.
So Oliver is doing this through bylaw enforcement. They are not up staffing to specifically be on patrol looking for every smoker. It's more going to be done on a complaints-driven basis in Oliver, as opposed to just looking for people that are violating, but it is being done through their bylaw enforcement process.
Okay, and second part, yeah, if you can't enforce the bylaws, then people say, why should we have them? I thought this was going to, myself, I thought it was going to do with cannabis. And similar to the States, you can't openly smoke it. You're supposed to purchase it and take it home.
It depends on the state. Oregon, you can vape in public.
Yeah, I'm talking cannabis.
You can vape cannabis in public.
And,
Vape.
well, that's dumb. Okay,
No, That's
anyways.
not, actually.
Yeah, but, yeah, so it's the enforcement part that I'm not sure of. And I'm not sure about the whole sidewalk thing. I like the idea if you closed a road, like you closed Market, then there shouldn't be any smoking there of cigarettes or anything during an event, except in a designated area. I can't see I can't see how we're going to be able to enforce it, even if it is by complaint.
Could we possibly implement similar like areas like Kelowna and that, where there's signage actually on the businesses that says you cannot smoke within whatever, 25, 30 feet, then that would
And they can
immediately
put it on
eliminate the
there.
sidewalk scenario totally,
Yeah.
because then you're in that area and that's non-smoking. So if all the merchants do that, put signs on their businesses, then the sidewalk is immediately wiped out, so to speak. Go ahead.
So Oliver does actually have a sign component in their bylaw. We didn't include that in ours because it actually put the onus on the business owners to be required to obey the bylaw by posting signs, and it seemed like an undue thing to put on the businesses, that they would be responsible for purchasing or putting up signs that specifically related to the bylaw. That's based on how Oliver did it.
But we could put a reference in the signage that would be put on the business as per bylaw 2054, like they do at like certain call parks, they violate RDKB bylaw numbers, so it doesn't make the business responsible for implementing it because we're referring to the city bylaw. Just a thought. Councillor Hammett, then Councillor Butler, and then gentleman in the back.
Yeah, I think you'll find that there's quite a few merchants that actually smoke, and now you're gonna be pushing them into the back alleys, where
great.
some of them don't have access to back alleys, and then they can't keep an eye on their store. And I know for the people that have patios, some of the reason they have patios is for the people that wanna sit outside and enjoy smoke with their coffee.
You can have it both ways. You got non-smokers' rights too.
Well, the non-smokers have the whole inside. That's why they have to move the smokers
So now
outside.
you're
and
forcing
you've
them
already-
inside that they
you've
can
already-
enjoy the outdoors.
So can I finish talking,
Go
or are you
ahead,
gonna
yeah,
cut me off?
No,
Are you
no,
gonna
go
cut me
ahead.
off?
No.
Okay.
Well, you're looking at me, so I commented.
Yeah, but now you're looking behind me.
Because I'm
Okay.
a corporate officer has hands.
So,
I have to keep
so
an eye on everything here.
smokers already feel like pariahs, like hiding around corners and staying away from groups of people, you know, and I know that personally. I don't like to smoke in a crowd or around people. If there's people around, I'll move around a corner. But now it's, the biggest complaint I've heard is smoking cannabis in front of the stores, and we have restaurants and businesses downtown that have patios where there's people sitting outside of their patio area smoking weed on city benches that is coming in towards the restaurant patio area, and that's causing a concern. And there's a lot more repercussions from inhaling cannabis smoke than there is from cigarette smoke.
There's no proof of that. There's no proof of what
Well,
you
I know,
said.
I'll throw up.
That's your
That's
personal,
me.
you can't deal with personal agendas.
Right.
Unless it's confirmed
But
and
it's-
verified.
I find it a lot more offensive than cigarette smoke.
Well, you find it offensive, but that's not a
Yes.
statement you can make.
But you're not gonna have, okay, well, that's just my statement, and
And you're biased because you're a smoker.
so am I not supposed to speak?
No, I didn't say that. But you're looking at me, you're asking questions.
I just think that cannabis should be dealt with separately.
Can't do that.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
To our corporate officer.
So this.
I would not recommend you do that. How about
And
that?
this is where it could get challenging, where if you split these up, we would have to
Yeah.
bring it back to legal. It could be a form of discrimination potentially
Yeah,
against
exactly.
one or the other. That's, I believe, why maybe the other towns have handled it the same way with doing it for one or the other. You're still allowed to smoke on private property. A lot of the city streets don't have sidewalks on one side or the other, so
Yeah, I know.
there's plenty of opportunity still for smoking or smoking cannabis or vaping around the area, but like you can't necessarily discriminate against one or the other. So we would have to send this back to legal
Yeah.
to see if we can split the two up.
The statement when I said you can't, I would retract that and say I recommend you don't break them up because it could cause legal challenges then because, like you said, discriminate. That was my intent of that comment. To Councillor Butler, to Les in the back, and then Councillor Crowd.
Yeah, I wouldn't see it as discrimination at all, or you're discriminating against people consuming alcohol. You can't say that smoking cigarettes and smoking cannabis are the exact same thing just because you're inhaling it. I mean, you're drinking a beer, I mean, you're not allowed to do that on public sidewalks either, you're not, yeah. So the other thing I wanted to point out is what Councillor Thompson said about it being an extremely addictive habit and hard to quit. And also as a previous smoker, I don't hate the smell. And I smell it and I think, oh, I want one, right? So tempting those people that have been able to quit is unfortunate. You know, I don't want to walk down the sidewalk and smell something and be like, oh,
Are you referring to marijuana or?
I'm referring to both, yeah. They're both addictive substances that people have had a hard time quitting, and putting that temptation in front of them in public, I don't think is fair.
So it's gasoline smoke.
Les.
Okay, well, first off, the secondhand smoke. What research there was done on secondhand smoke was probably 20, 30 years ago, and probably on enclosed environments. What's the deal with outside? I mean, if you're 30 feet away from somebody and the wind's blowing in the opposite direction, where's the secondhand smoke? And even if it's blowing in their direction, by the time the smoke gets there, how concentrated is it, and what effect would it have? First off, but that's just that. How about the actual health effects of smoking? First off, let's deal with stress relief. For a lot of people, having a smoke is a way of stress relief. For people who smoke pot on a regular basis, I've been told it replaces their coping mechanisms. So in other words, if you make it so they can't smoke, they have no other way of actually dealing with the stresses in their life that they encounter all through their life. And considering what just happened to us in May, for the next 2 to 5 years, stress is going to be a big player in people's lives here in town. And you're talking about basically making it tougher on them. That's what you're talking about. Now, who's going to enforce this? How are you going to enforce this? And it has been pointed out by somebody who actually was on council here at one time. If you don't enforce your bylaws, it means that other bylaws get ignored. You're basically, by not enforcing a bylaw that you put in place, you're creating an environment that breeds scofflaw, and that's not a good thing. And if you really want to push the whole idea of health, and you're doing this for health reasons, not just pure legal reasons, I have to ask, when the 2015 fires enveloped this whole valley with smoke for weeks, and we did research, one of the things that I found was there's a document, and it's only an advice, but it's an advice from a provincial government body to people in lower government areas about creating clean air spaces in their communities for wildfire smoke emergencies like we have experienced now at least twice. I don't see any movement or any talk about doing that. And for people like me who have asthma and are on a fixed income, I can't follow the advice of, oh, just leave the area for a couple of weeks. I can't do that. I have to basically shut myself in my house. So if you're not going to follow up on all the health things related to a clean environment for air, then I think people are going to think you're being picky and choosy, and you're not really talking about health. You're talking about a picayune way of manipulating people's lives because you don't like what they do. And yes, also you're talking about one of the most addictive habits, I'm talking about tobacco here, that people can have, and saying, oh no, you for whatever the amount of time you're downtown, you're going to have to just put up with not having to be able to do that. this is the kind of situation that you're fostering by contemplating a bylaw with this much reach. That's my 2 cents. Oh, yeah.
Points less, but I agree with one definitely, which I've always advocated for years. If you're not gonna enforce the bylaws, get them off the books, because they're useless. Again,
Thank you. So just we were talking about sidewalks, and perhaps sidewalks, all sidewalks is maybe too general, but just to put this into perspective with the downtown core, provincial legislation says that you may not smoke in any business that is a workplace or other prescribed place, typically public assembly areas, or within a prescribed distance from a doorway, window, or air intake of said places. And that prescribed distance is 6 meters. So if you think about Market Avenue and draw a 6-meter circle around every door, I guarantee you've covered the entire street.
exactly. Yes, Brooke?
Okay, two things are come up. One, so everybody understands, cannabis is not tobacco, right? I don't even know why they're lumped into the same thing. Cannabis is more akin to alcohol. It's mingle drink. It's controlled by the Liquor Control Board. You are not allowed to publicly drink anywhere, so you shouldn't be allowed to publicly smoke pot anywhere. Cigarettes, you're right that if you look at market, technically nobody should be smoking on it at all, right? And maybe it's something as simple as putting a sign on either end just saying that Market Street is a non-smoking area. If you want to do that, and all the other public areas that we have, it makes sense that because nobody is supposed to be doing it in public buildings and stuff like that. It's already province-wide, but the consumption of cannabis should be exactly the same as the consumption of alcohol. Right?
I have a question. What about those little signs that we already have around Grand Forks on some of the stop signs, smoke-free?
That's idle-free.
No, smoke-free. I can show you one on 16. It says it right there. It says Grand Forks PF smoke-free. What are those?
I know those are in school zones.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure that there's any other than outside of school zones.
No, there's one on 77th and 16th on that corner of the stop sign, right under the stop sign.
That's within the distance of the high school. I think it was a 1 block radius, 100 meters.
Okay, there you go. But there's a reference to a sign for example also. Okay, who was next? Councillor Thompson, then Les again, and then another fellow in the second. Oh, Councillor Ross, okay, go ahead. We're gonna beat this one to death.
Yeah, I don't want to beat this to death. I think it is heavy-handed. I don't believe for a second that we should put cannabis and alcohol in the same pot. But I've been to cities in the world where public consumption of alcohol is completely legal, and the results of that is horrible. It's not the same behavior as a result of consuming cannabis. And I agree with Liz. I know people who often vape just to control tremors for friends with MS, or I have a friend with epilepsy, and he can drive. Only the way he can drive legally is because he controls his epileptic seizures through the consumption of cannabis. And I think this is very heavy-handed, and it's not the same as alcohol by any stretch of the imagination. I just think, why don't we just change our logo to settle down and butt out? It's so, you know, and I have been in communities where the public consumption of alcohol, of cannabis is legal only when it's vaped. And I've stood right beside people who were vaping cannabis, and I had no idea because I did not smell it.
That's fair.
It was right there, and that's the difference with vaping. I think it's very heavy-handed, and also the judging that we do. And there are cigarette packets. I don't smoke pot and I don't smoke cigarettes, but I don't like judging people who do. And those cigarette cartons, there's like black ones on them. People still open it up and light out. So, I mean, you know, how much do we have to, oh, well, it's not healthy. It's also judgy. And I just think, yeah, I don't like to have cigarettes in public places. I don't like it that I can't go out on a, if I'm at a pub and I can't go out on the deck because people are smoking out there. I sort of feel like that's, you know, sort of ruins my fun, because I'd rather be sitting outside, but I don't want to smell the cigarettes. But I think the whole vaping thing yeah, keep it off Market Street, keep it off the main street, for sure, okay? But just let people sit in a park and control their tremors or their epileptic seizure, or calm their nerves, or, you know, it does help people. It is a medicine. And I just think this is very, very judgmental.
Councillor Thompson, then Les. Councillor Crawford.
I hear what you're saying, and I tend to agree with Councillor Ross. But if we're gonna go this route, I'm just being devil's advocate here. What about Second Street? You know, there's restaurants and a bakery and some other things there. I mean, are we gonna just, you know, just limit it to Market and discriminate against Second Street and those businesses there? Or, I mean,
Still the 6 meter radius though.
I know that. But I mean, the thing is that it would still have the 6 meter radius on those other
Provincial
businesses as
standards,
well.
yeah.
And so they'd have to stand in the middle of the street, I guess, if they wanted to have a cigarette. But, you know, how far do we want to go in dictating what people can and can't do? I agree that consumption of smoking of cannabis is one thing. I have smelled it and I find it offensive. But, you know, people doing that, that's their business. Just not around me or in public.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Les Johnson again. I found another wrench to throw at your health-related parts. This is one of the areas in Canada, literally this town, this area right here, is one of the areas in Canada that has the highest amount of naturally occurring radon. Now, does the city have any kind of programs to deal with making it easier for people to become aware of that, get the kits, understand the kits, or anything like that? Because if you don't, then, oh, that's one missing piece in your concern about what people breathe and how healthy it is. And that's something that, like I said, we stick out in Canada over that. There's naturally occurring uranium in the soil, and that's where the radon comes from. And if you have to spend all your time in your house because, God forbid, your cigarette smoke should leave the building and you're stuck in your basement because your family doesn't smoke cigarettes, you're breathing in radon gas along with your cigarettes. Does the city have any help with that?
We're gonna be raising houses last round.
That's only in that area. Anyways, that was it.
Gentleman in the second row, I overlooked you, sir.
Good morning, your worship and councillors. My name is Nigel James, and I would like to make the following comment. Back about 40 years ago, my commanding officer once said, "Do not give an order that you cannot enforce." And I would suggest that council think very carefully about that, because otherwise I suspect that Grand Forks will become the laughing stock of, certainly if it's not the boundary, it's British Columbia and indeed Canada. We can see what happens when things go wrong, such as another law which is never obeyed is, well, stop at all halt signs. Very rarely does anybody ever stop at one in the city. Thank you.
Councillor Crawford, Councillor Hammond.
Okay, just to go back, the smoking part, cigarette smoking, vaping, all that stuff. We already have it that you're not supposed to be doing it within a certain thing. But we can say our facilities, the indoor facilities, are taken care of. I am gonna argue the cannabis thing. When you're talking about controlling tremors, when you're talking about controlling epilepsy, medical marijuana, this is not medical marijuana, this is recreational. So people that have never done it before are gonna do it.
Oh,
No, seriously, it's recreate.
it's already available. You think all of a sudden it's gonna, use is gonna spike?
Rules of law.
Okay, excuse me, yeah, I'll finish. No, it's not gonna go crazy, it's not gonna spike it. It's gonna be similar to our closest neighbor, which is Washington. And their rules, you can't smoke it. Like, you can buy it and you can take it home. You can actually even take it in the premises and areas that allow you to smoke it. But it's the exact same thing as alcohol. So, we're looking at recreational, not medicinal. So not for people's purposes, for health and that type of thing. So, I can't see why the government just didn't say it's the same. Like, you're not allowed to smoke in public. Cigarettes, like this whole thing, I would just take out everything to do with cigarettes and vaping. And, yeah, just leave it as cannabis.
Councillor Hammond?
Yeah, I agree with everything
Then our
you said.
CEO.
I think if we took out the smoking and the vaping and it just left the cannabis in this bylaw, some people don't like getting stoned. I don't want to get stoned. I don't like the smell of marijuana, and I don't want to high. I don't want the the results of somebody else is getting high on the street and sitting there smoking. 'Cause
You're
that's
afraid
the
you're gonna
first-
get high?
I don't want cannabis smoke. I don't like cannabis smoke. I find it very offensive. It's skunky. It smells bad. And people are doing it now, like they have been, and I know that there's been merchants chasing them off because it's offensive to their customers, especially when they're sitting outside eating. They've been getting up and leaving because they find the smell very
But
offensive.
vaping doesn't.
Vaping is a
Yeah.
different thing, but smoking recreational marijuana in a public place, it should be. It's like, you can't sit out on the street and drink a beer, but you can sit out there and drink an iced tea. You know, you can have a cigarette, but you cannot smoke cannabis. I just, and I think either, I don't know, or maybe we should just wait until after UBCM, table this motion and see what other communities are doing and get some more research. But
Possible until the federal government puts down more distinct regulations, because it is still a federal issue. We're getting too deep into this.
Yeah, I'll second
Or
that.
CAO.
So your worship, just in concert to that, is I was going to suggest to council that they can either choose to table it, which means that it doesn't go anywhere anymore, or they can refer it back to staff, as the corporate officer had suggested, to get some legal to see if it is likely that we could split the two, so it's just showing cannabis alone. Council to be aware though that we do that, and this will not be a decision of this council. It will be.
But we're not actually making any decisions here anyway. We're just recommending it to the 24th for the first 3 readings, at which time we can table it then. In the meantime, more research can be done.
Your worship, we wouldn't even have to take that step if council decides that they want to have staff do some more, take it to legal. At this meeting, they could do that, and then it would not come as readings. It would be redundant at that point.
Refer it back to staff.
And we already have the
Yeah.
provincial regulations around smoking.
I would like to table this or defer any decisions on this until after UBCM.
Yeah.
Well, I'll refer it back.
Yeah, refer it back to staff, because it's not gonna happen
But
today anyway.
Not to go and get any further advice, just to sit on it, to look at that, from UBCM.
Oh, I see, okay.
And maybe we'll have better information to share with council.
By not initiating this resolution, which is September 24th, or referring it back to staff automatically kills it.
I require a point of information. So, I'm sorry, I would have assumed that the provincial regulations around smoking would have applied to cannabis, smoking cannabis anyway.
Go ahead.
As currently written, that has not been updated to include cannabis. It says tobacco, subject to section 2, a person must not smoke tobacco, hold lighted tobacco, use an e-cigarette, or hold an activated e-cigarette. That's the current wording.
Well, let's wait for the province to update
Yeah, from the feds, which I said earlier. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kevin's right on the smoking piece, but on the cannabis side of things, they have included language to say that cannabis matches whatever's written for smoking.
Right.
So that's not in the act for smoking, but it's in the cannabis act that's coming through. So it will be covered. Anywhere you can't smoke cannabis.
Again, it's coming from the feds. It'll be handed down from the feds.
From the province. but
Yeah,
that's-
That's what makes this redundant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anything that comes down can supersede this possibly anyway.
So this makes this redundant, so.
So let's just.
Refer it back to staff.
Yeah.
Actually, Your Worship, if you refer it back to staff, that means we're still working on it.
Yeah.
So, it's council's choice. If they want to table it, that means it just sits in limbo until such a time that this council or a future council decides that they want to bring the topic up again.
Let's send it to smokers limbo.
Okay, so, Gordon.
So one quick question I would have of council at this point. The issue seems to be largely around the public sidewalks and the core commercial zones or anything like this that would possibly impact current smokers. At least that's what I'm hearing. What about the other sections that are in this bylaw? We could simply strike these two sections, public sidewalks and the commercial core areas, and rely on the provincial regulations regarding this. But we're talking about parks, picnic areas, school property, like things like that this bylaw also is. Does council want to, I hear it's redundant at this point to have this bylaw, but if the only two sections that are really redundant are section C and D, are we supposed to not worry about the others at this point as well? This is just me trying to get clarification from council, because we're talking about community facilities, outdoor public places, parks, picnic areas that are enjoyed by a large amount of the population, so.
But the redundant portion that we just discussed was because the marijuana issue came into the conversation. So it wasn't made redundant in regarding to smoking.
Yeah.
So we have to really draw that fine line. You see, we're not differentiating from the two here.
Yeah.
Because the conversation of cannabis and marijuana came up, so it became redundant until provincial government hands it down. But the smoking is quite credible. It's there. That ruling is there already for smokers.
You should separate it out. With respect, I would like to see this whole issue not dealt with at all until we come back from the UBCM. Because, other municipalities are gonna have parks and green spaces and picnic areas, and, how are they intending to deal with this? And rather than, coming back and doing a bunch of amendments, what's the appropriate way to just put this, just to receive it for information? And then just,
But with all due respect, are you referring, when you just said about parks again, are you referring to marijuana because you want to wait for the UBCM, how that plays out? Because this is targeted at smoking, which is already happening all around us.
I hear that, but I just think that if we tabled it until the next committee of the whole meeting, we will have had the opportunity to bring back some additional information from other municipalities that may be facing the same issues that we are.
So we already have two municipalities.
And speaking to that, the next committee of the whole would be in October, just before the election. Then there would be the election, there would be one more meeting of council, of this current council, and then we're in the inauguration meeting. So the timeline, why we propose this today, is for this council to make a proper decision. To bring it back in October would maybe not be the best choice, because then there would be a new council in play by the time fourth reading rolls around, and they should be afforded the opportunity to hear the entire story from the beginning. So if this council does not want to move forward with this, that's fine, it's perfect. Like, we'll just wait for the feedback from UBCM and include that in the November or December committee of the whole at that point.
But what portion is going to the UBCM, the marijuana issue or the smoking issue?
I think
Marijuana.
So it has no correlation whatsoever, because this is regarding smoking.
I know, but we're dealing what we're dealing with is in this particular bylaw are two issues, the cannabis and the tobacco smoke.
So strike it,
So-
strike the marijuana.
But what I would like to, and the reason I'm asking to defer this is that other municipalities may also be having the same issues with tobacco and with cannabis. And I would like the opportunity to speak with them and find out what their proposals are and recommendations. I mean, I don't want to, I understand and I appreciate the work that's gone into this, but I don't want to just go off half-cocked and endorse something that is going to be redundant perhaps anyway with other regulations that are coming down. So, you know, and my concern is with the marijuana is about green areas and parks and that, because, you know, if it's legal, I don't know. You know, I don't want to rush into this. I want to make a truly informed decision on it. I just,
So maybe we could just withdraw the marijuana portion on this bylaw, and then we would see what the consensus is of council. Because based on just the smoking issue. Because a question to our corporate officer, or does anybody have the answer from staff on this one? Was any of this reasoning for this smoking complaint driven by any merchants?
It's the smoking.
No, not pot,
Yeah,
but smoking.
No, like smoking along Second Street, I've heard feedback from, that the tobacco smoke in the area is quite a lot around certain businesses. So,
Because there was a comment mentioned earlier, I remember saying that it's affecting the businesses, the smoking. Because right now, there's no consensus about marijuana smoking yet, but there should be. So this is the whole,
Well, they're contravening provincial regulations about smoking. So we're creating a bylaw that just reinforces regulations that have already been imposed by the province.
Exactly. So we should stay on the factual basis, which is regarding smoking, and not
Right.
delve into the
That's what, I
marijuana
don't
issue
mean
yet.
insulting when I say this redundant, but I thought most of this was covered. My impression was most of this was covered by provincial regulations anyway. Right?
Councillor Butler, and then Councillor Hammond.
I think we've spent a lot of time discussing this, and I like Councillor Thompson's recommendation. We can keep going around in circles, but I think we need to come back to this with clear heads after discussing it with other people at the UBCM, and staff has heard what we said. So I'd like to put forward a
Well,
tabling
I'm
motion.
gonna-
I'd like
I'm
to
gonna
put
call
forward,
the
well, I'd like to put forward a
Call the question.
tabling, excuse
There's a
me.
motion on the table.
Yes, I'm putting forward a tabling motion, which there's no discussion on. Tabling motions don't get discussion under Robert's Rules of Order, and I
No, but I'm gonna
recommend.
call the question, Councillor Butler, and they can vote it down, and you can put a tabling motion.
What's the resolution?
That's not the procedure of how Robert's Rules works. I'm putting forward a tabling motion for the first meeting in October to bring this bylaw back for discussion.
Okay,
Call question, please.
all those in favor? All those opposed?
I would have just liked to defeat the motion.
Okay. We're done. All right, moving on to, there's no late items, so the next thing will be question period from the public. Gentleman in the third row.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Dalton Gagne. I live on 1664 Lansdowne Crescent. For those who don't know, it's opposite the police station, down 16th, and then a little crescent off in the Cooley Bus. When we built 24 years ago, there was a green place, a teardrop-shaped green space of which is planted grass was established. And at that time, we put a line under the road, and one of the neighbors off his fourth station had been sprinkling this, watering this green place. What has happened is that new people have bought it, and he's created a shop and is no longer using the fourth station, so the green place has got no water. So what I did was I dug up the line and put a garden hose on it. I've been rolling out my garden hose and watering it, which has worked fine, but as you know, next year our city council is going to be charging everyone with the water that they consume. So my request is that city treat this just like you do boulevards and other things. Come and establish a system of watering this green place, or dig it up and pave it over. One of the two.
It's city property?
It's city property.
Or put rocks,
I beg your pardon?
or put rocks.
Or put rocks, or put brick, or put something. Now, I've brought this up before. Last fall, I was curling with David Reed, your operation manager. I had him down, explain the situation. Nothing happened. In about April, my wife and I wrote a letter, dropped it off here at City Council, explaining this situation, and nothing has happened. Then last week, I spoke again to your City Council. They suggested I come up and talk to you, and at very least, I've been a taxpayer for over 40 years. At the very least,
Did you say city council or city staff?
I beg your pardon?
Did you say city council? or-
City staff. I
Okay.
wrote a letter to your city staff down below in April. And again, last week, my wife and I stopped and discussed as to how I was going to get, at the very least, a response to my request. I've been a taxpayer for over 40 years, and to not have a response to a written request, I feel is just not right. Anyways, I'm bringing this up to City Council. Would you please look into it?
Noted.
And I've lived here, as I say, over 40 years. My phone number is exactly the same, and I've lived for 24 years in Lansdowne Crescent. I'm there available. Please come down, drive down. I'll happily show you the situation, and
I know what you're
have it
talking about, I've
resolved,
seen
okay?
it.
Thank you.
I've seen it, so, okay. It'll be dealt with, thank you.
Thank you.
Gentleman in the back.
Nigel James speaking again. About 2 years ago, there was a procedure brought forward for city staff procedure that within a certain amount of period, any correspondence would be dealt with and a reply given to the sender of the letter or the correspondence. It was about 2 years ago, and it was in fact, it's a bit longer than 2, maybe 3, maybe 4. The way we used to work it in the military, we got a letter in, you immediately sent a reply back saying, got your letter, we're working on it, and we'll be back to you within a certain amount of time. People then, because at this time, nobody, including Mr. Gagnier, knew that anything had arrived at City Hall and they were doing anything with it at all. It's just a suggestion that you follow your procedures.
Thank you, Mr. James. Councillor Butler.
Yeah, I'd just like to say this is the first time I think that I've heard of your request. When letters come in to the city, usually they get put on a weekly information summary that's sent out to council on Fridays. It's sent out in a PDF format, which means I can't go into it and cut and paste anything. I guess I'd have to download it as a Word document and then
You can just turn
maybe it's my technical challenges. But yeah, I don't typically respond to things that are in there, but I don't even remember seeing that. Maybe I just missed it when it came through in the weekly information
It
summary.
wasn't there.
We've never
It's never been
seen
there.
it.
Yeah.
No, it's never been there.
Well, I didn't think I had to have it notarized and duplicated
Well, no,
and
but-
signed.
No, you don't have to.
I
No,
thought
but you're
just-
right. There's a problem with procedures if we're not getting back to you.
Okay,
Absolutely.
And this will be
Yeah.
the fourth time I've been to city council regarding this, and
Not
at the
city
very
council, city
least, I
staff.
would like
City
to-
staff.
City
not
staff, do not
council.
refer to city council, because if
No,
you would have
not
CC'd
city
it to my
council.
office, or, which is done a lot of times, then I also look into it.
Yes,
How many letters have you written?
one letter. One
Okay,
letter.
was that just recently? In April?
In about April, before the flood.
Yeah, no, we didn't get that.
No.
Didn't come into our package.
No. Usually because sometimes if letters come to my desk, I forward them immediately to our CEO, and the ball starts rolling
Okay.
to our CEO.
So, your worship, it all depends on the avenue that he sent it. If he may have sent it to Public Works, I understand, I think that he might have talked to Mr. Reed. It may have gone in a different area, and so it's one of those things that, depending on where it goes, council's not going to see every
Yeah.
piece piece of material that comes through City Hall when there's operational pieces. And so it sounds like Mr. Reed had talked to Mr. Gagnier, sorry?
Yes,
Yeah.
I spoke to him after
So,
Kermit
Mr.
last
Gagne,
fall.
did you deposit it at the front desk?
Yes,
Yeah.
Because you
We-
read that,
we-
it
on the
comes
city
through,
station
yeah,
area,
it
we
comes
wrote
through
it
my
out.
desk and everyone else. Okay, well, an oversight.
okay.
Mistakes happen sometimes.
It's not, because we're not
Consider
being
that.
charged with water right now. I don't mind watering it for this year, but I would
You
really
shouldn't be
like to
watering
have
it
this
anyway.
situation addressed for next year.
You shouldn't
Please.
have to be watering it anyway. It's
Oh,
not your
it's-
property.
It's not a big deal, it's a beautiful
No, I know, I
piece of
understand,
property.
but
Thank you.
there could be implications too if you do and something happens to the area, then you could be responsible for it, if for something sinks or whatever, so
Well,
there's
we-
many things that could be occurring, so you shouldn't be
We've
touching it.
watered and weeded and fertilized it for 24 years, and up
Well,
to
good
now
for
it
you.
hasn't been a problem, but next year it will be.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
for sale.
Yeah.
You don't smoke while you're doing that, do you?
You're gonna claim it when it's on that portion? I believe that gentleman might speak.
Rod Zelensky, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a comment about your council remuneration bylaw later on your agenda today. I'd like to suggest, I think it's probably the second last clause in there about creating a committee. Right now it says that within 6 months of the election year, what I would suggest just for timing purposes, the committee is struck within the first month of the election year, and a clause be put in there that the report gets back to council 6 months previous to the election. That way then it's not a political football at the time of election.
Thank you. Les?
Les Johnson, taxpayer. I'm just looking at the revenue anticipation borrowing bylaw, and I'm seeing this number, and I'm wondering, $2 million, is that, are we talking about one lump sum, $2 million borrowing, or possibly we think it could go as much as $2 million? And the second part of this would be, are we talking about borrowing this money to pay expenditures we've already spent or committed to, or is this in anticipation, as it says in the thing? I'm just curious, that $2 million number, what is that? How does that work?
Get that to our CFO, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That is actually the amount that we have as an operating line of credit with the credit union. We haven't drawn anything on it to my knowledge. And I wouldn't know when the last time we might have, but certainly not since I've been here. It doesn't cost us anything to have it, but we do have it available. It can be used if we are short on expenditures before tax due date, and we need the cash to see us through until then. But the reason we're putting through the bylaw is that we do have this available. It's a requirement that we have to have the revenue anticipation bylaw in place for it.
Thank you.
It's annual. We do it every year. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, do we have any other questions? Oh, gentleman in the back.
Nigel James again. It's more of an observation, really, that partly that, and which gives rise to a question. There has been considerable activity on the social media, or some might call it anti-social media, and on the subject of water rates and charges, especially when the date comes due in, I think it's January next year when we start paying. The question I have is, at present, there is the flat rate for water at $72 per month. That almost exactly equates to the last year's rates of a combination of 3 items, which totaled $72.66. But there is also another one, which appears to be called a residence rate at $36. Is that correct? Perhaps the Chief Financial Officer could answer that one.
Through through you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, I don't have a copy of that bylaw handy, so if I could see exactly what line you're referring to.
Surely I can give you one of the bills you're going to send me. Slow down. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so the $36 actually is part of your mock billing, and that would be the rate that were you to pay the 56 cents for water, that would be the flat rate at that time.
Flat rate for water.
So as a result of the water rates analysis that was done, it was determined that for residential use, when we start billing, that a rate of the approximately 50% would be attributable to usage charges and 50% of the cost would be attributable to a fixed or flat fee. So that's where the $36 comes in. But you're not actually being billed for that right now. You see
Indeed
there's a
not.
credit on there.
But come the 1st of January, we will be billed. So that instead of $72 for the flat rate, then there's an additional $36 for an additional rate. Is that correct?
Through the mayor, yes, that's correct. We haven't, we will be doing more analysis to determine the exact amount that will be charged. So the $36 might not be exactly what the fixed portion will be.
Assuming that is going to happen, that those two figures are going to be put together, that makes it to be $108 that will be charged straight for being connected to the water, not using any. And that, I think, makes an increase, in fact,
Hold on,
of
Mr. James.
48% of flat rate.
Can our CFO respond to that last statement you made about $108?
No, that's not correct. You won't be charged $72, which is the current flat rate. You will be charged, let's say, $36 plus whatever your water usage is at approximately 56 cents.
So in fact, we'll be getting a cheaper flat rate, because currently the flat rate for water is $72.66. And in fact, that was last year. 3 separate items being added together to make it 72, rounding it off, I guess. What's happening now? I'm missing something.
Okay, so hang on a second.
So what will happen going forward is that people will be paying for their actual water usage. So if you're a low water user, yes, you will probably save money. If you're a high water user, you will be,
All right.
it'll cost you.
This brings to the question of how much are we going to pay as the flat rate for water? Not counting usage, just being connected.
At this point in time, it will be approximately the $36, but we do have to do more analysis and determine what our revenue requirements are for next year.
If it's $36, I would be very happy indeed, because it's about half the fixed cost now. As for the rest of the water, well, that we're using, having been going for half a year and knowing what rates it is, and assuming it's about the same for the second half of the year, in the summer months, obviously water rates, water usage is going to be much higher. Watering gardens and the like, for those who have gardens. And in the winter months, $10 or $12 is about enough for my weekly bath.
With respect, is there a question in there?
Really, just a comment. It's the water system, the whole thing on water has unfortunately caused a lot of hiatus, as you well realize, Your Worship.
But you're basing a lot of your statements on assumptions.
We what else has the city done except its assumptions, sending us a bill with some assumptions that they want some money for? You can't have it both ways.
No, but you had some clarification now.
I
on
now
actual
have.
stable numbers, so we don't need
That's
to.
what-
Very true. However, Your Worship, it would be much better if the city had informed people more clearly what was going to happen. It might be that I was informed and I didn't read it carefully enough, but I doubt that was the case. Maybe it's 6 of one and half a dozen the other. We will see what happens come January the 1st.
It'll become another election
Yeah.
issue.
I thought we
To
were
our,
pretty
to
clear
Councillor
about
Crog.
mock billing. Maybe we didn't define mock.
Okay, yeah, there was some confusion on social media. $72 flat rate, use as much water as you want. It's going to, and it'll probably be adjusted, but $36 is your base rate and then your usage on top of that. Now, some of the debate that was on that social media was about the proposed charges. Like I looked at my bill and it would be the 36 plus my usage. Another person in my neighborhood, I can't remember what mine was, but it was like only $70 or something. And his was $397. So they're saying he's using a lot more. My concern, as well as his, I'm pretty sure his meter was underwater. So through you to somebody that maybe knows, if the meters were flooded, is that gonna affect the electronics? And do we need to look at replacing some of those? Because a couple of people ended up with, like, in theory, a $400 bill for 2 months.
Does it save too much water?
Is that-
How they had to pay
is
for
that
the
on
flood
social
water?
media?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Page place.
yeah. So, yeah, is the meter being underwater gonna affect it? And then why the difference? My meter wasn't underwater and it looks like it's functioning properly.
only mock bill
And
anyway.
his, yes, yeah,
So,
but
sure,
a mock bill of $400.
Still, it'll be addressed, I'm sure, because there's a lot of issues regarding flooding that have to be addressed.
Yeah,
So, Mr.
so are we
Reed, there's the
addressing the
question.
meters? Underwater
Meters, meters go off meter if they get wet.
It's getting close to election
Obviously,
time, so we have to start talking
yeah.
about water meters.
Okay. We're not supposed to talk about water meters, past the resolution. No discussion on water meters.
Can we get this done?
Sorry, for you, Mr. Mayor, the exact question is, are the water meters, the internal or
Yeah,
inside
is
water
it
meters
damaged?
affected because of flooding?
Yeah.
We've had some that have been affected and some that haven't, and I don't know if it's duration or the exact location of the metering, but we do have a DFA request in to replace meters that have been affected due to the flooding.
So we're gonna initiate submersible meters?
The tip meters.
Is that gonna be part of our
Shouldn't be affected, but some of the internal ones were, so we're working through that right now.
Thank you.
Yes.
So we pay 20% of the cost of
Okay, go ahead.
replacement of DFA?
The insurance
Correct.
should cover it.
Okay, so, just, are we, like, I know people go to social media and complain. I keep saying, take it down to City Hall and let them have a look at it. But is there a way in the database for the meters that we can actually see the spikes? Because in theory, it shouldn't be $400. So any that seem unusually high, we should maybe look at getting a.
I think your comment is perfect. Instead of dealing on social media, come to City Hall and present your case. That would settle everything instead of dealing on people, please.
Well, we should still be able to deal with it internally.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just to add to that, some people's properties were affected in their hot water tanks floated, or there was a service issue within the house, so there was water running steadily for
a certain length of time, so some bills may reflect that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we can fix it, we have the means. Right. We have the means to fix it.
That's right.
All right, any other questions? Because I'm going to call this meeting. All right.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.